Welcome, listeners, to www.ironradio.org, the website and podcast for all things strength sports and sports nutrition. With your hosts, Lonnie Lowery.
Remember, Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree held together with scar tissue and bone spurs.
Rob Fortney.
And I'm telling you, the pain that I would suffer was beyond excruciating.
And Phil Stevens.
Do it, Rob. You'll kill all those nerves.
Thanks for listening.
Good morning, everybody. Go to strengthguild.com, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to the Iron Radio collections, and we've got new shirts and new banners for you to support the show. Everything from just a regular banner, regular shirt, to ones with sayings on them, like Lonnie's Phil is like a gnarled old oak tree shirt. And some news for you, we're going to have some contests for people who own these shirts and things. So if you support the show, we'll let you more on that later. So if you get in on these early, you can be one of the first people to win some prizes. So thank you very much. Go check out the site, strengthguild.com. Scroll down to Iron Radio Collections and support the show.
Welcome, Iron Radio listeners. This is Lonnie Lowery. I'm an exercise physiology and sports nutrition professor of about 20 years, and I'm a former competitive bodybuilder.
And this is Phil Stevens, who runs Strength Guild and powerlifter, Highland Games athlete. Jeez, just always busy.
Nice. Killing goats over there.
Yep.
This is Dr. Mike T. Nelson. I'm a faculty member at the Carrick Institute. Actually now associate professor at the Carrick Institute, so pretty excited about that.
Sweet.
I created the Flex Diet Cert and a bunch of other stuff, and still at home for the longest time in 4 years.
Yep. All right, everybody. I will not be remiss, and I will tell you our topic after the break is essentially going to be starting a new training cycle. So people are talking about emerging from their homes, and whether you agree or not, we'll just talk about maybe some tips to do it safely, or, you know, how will you get back to it, right? I mean, we were just saying before we hit the record button, I mean, I personally, if I was 25 years old, I'd be chomping at the bit. Like, I can't just sit around and waste a year or two of my competitive prime. How am I going to start my next serious training cycle once they open gyms again and that kind of stuff? So that's what it's about, starting new training cycle. We have mail and news. First, though, this first one is mail. This is from Ed. He says, definitely above my pay grade, though you might enjoy, and if suitable, discuss on Iron Radio. Be well and be safe, Ed. So this is actually, what he sent was a research summary from Greg Nuckols, and it was on a paper by Bjornson in 2018, and the full study's name is a real mouthful, but I'm going to give it to you for you nerds who want to go look. But delayed myonuclear addition, myofiber hypertrophy, and increases in strength with high-frequency, low-load, blood flow-restricted training to volitional fatigue or volitional failure. So essentially it's some evidence. They're trying to find some evidence here for delayed growth. We've talked before about don't freak out, like, you know, sometimes strength and size games, they feel delayed, right, after training and that kind of thing. They don't just shut off, you know, visibly within a couple of days of stopping training and that kind of thing. So the key word here, I think, is delayed. So it basically says they had subjects complete 2 blocks of high-frequency blood flow restriction training with 10 days between the blocks. Long story short here, and again, this is just Greg's summary, muscle fiber cross-sectional area decreased at first and then increased until at least 10 days after the last session was completed. Maximal knee extension strength increased until at least 20 days after the last session was completed. So again, this idea that you get on a cellular level, you know, size or strength gains. Now, this whole 10 days thing, okay, I guess. I mean, when you're looking at, I'm not that experienced with, you know, single fiber cross-sectional area kinds of things. Closest I ever got was like MRI kinds of things, but the time frames here seem very brief to me. But again, the idea here is that there's delayed strength and size gains. And then number 3, this again is a little bit of a question mark for me personally, but muscle fiber cross-sectional area, it didn't change in parallel with whole muscle size. So different patterns of adaptation, apparently. It makes me wonder about, like, some of these things that are just 10 days. Could that be hydration? Or when you do single fiber studies, can you actually see meaningful, like protein synthetic growth enough to actually see? I don't know. To me, it leaves a couple of questions, but it is an interesting study, Ed, about the delayed nature of this stuff. How you'll continue to grow. I mean, I don't think it's going to surprise any of the three of us. The weight training is the stimulus, right? The growth is going to be subsequent to that sort of compensation. It's almost like your muscles say, I don't know what you just did to me, but you're not doing that again, and then you grow.
I always think of it as the adaptation can't ever really be stopped, but you can definitely do things to play around with the time course. So similar to this study, I'd love to see a study that, kind of give a pretty hefty stimulus to people and had one group do, quote, good recovery and one group do poor recovery, but have a long enough time period that they measure them. And it'd be interesting to see if they both got to similar points, but just maybe the amount of time it took the, quote, poor recovery people took longer. I don't know. That's something I've always kind of wondered about.
Yeah. And, they're always using knee extension in these studies. I know why they do that, basically. But, I mean, that has I would guess that has very little interest for Phil's crew. Let's all go do quad extensions. I mean, maybe it's some kind of supportive injury prevention or something, but I don't know.
Yeah. And also the measurements on there, too. There's a great review in Frontiers of Physiology 2019 from Haun, Haun. Critical evaluation of biological construct skeletal muscle hypertrophy. And he does a really good job of reviewing, are we looking at whole body size? Or if we are, what are we looking at? Are we doing MRI? Are we trying to do whole body composition, like bod pod, underwater weighing? Are we looking at fiber types? And he pulled up a lot of the different studies where they've done, multiple methods to look at it, and they don't always agree with each other either. So that makes it interesting of maybe there's some type of order that we're not seeing. Maybe if the fibers are getting a little bit bigger, but it's not enough to detect even on an MRI at a whole body level. How much size do you need for the fibers to then show up? Or are we looking at different things and measurement error? And so it's, when you go down in the weeds, it gets more complicated than what you would imagine at face value, too.
It does. I mean, in the gym, it's like, I'm bigger, bro, or the scale moves. But I mean, the physiologists, they'll tell you it's not about testosterone. It's not about insulin. I mean, as far as, literal like protein synthesis and
synthetic response.
Yeah. And it's like, but, then the lay guy says, well, I watched this dude increase his T levels, usually, super physiologically, of course, or they watch guys abuse insulin and that kind of stuff, and these guys get gigantic. So within a physiologic range, it's not the same thing as the pharmaceutical range, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm sure when people started abusing anabolics, they didn't just say, oh, you've got to go super physiologic. I mean, for them, it was just men are more muscly than women. Let's try some of that hormone, What about the delay, Phil? Does that surprise you at all that there's like this 10 to 20 day delay in size and strength that just continues to go up?
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising. I mean, sadly, I mean, we all know that everything takes time. Most people don't want to hear that, but it's the whole discipline over motivation thing. I mean, it's just sticking to it, and it's all about being consistent. That's really, when it comes down to it, making great gains is about being disciplined and consistent and just coming in all the time. And it's slowly going to happen. So
on a day in and day out basis, I guess what I'm getting at is, I mean, you guys taper on some level, right? I mean, how do you do a taper before a meet? Like, you're not going to panic like, oh my God, we better compete the day after we do our last heavy doubles,
Yeah, no.
So
there's a kind of plan that things out, but I mean,
yeah.
No, I mean, that's like with any of my people, our work is done 4 weeks out. From that point on, it's just realizing strength. You know what I'm saying? So the strength gains are that you're going to show at the meet were done much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's those last few weeks are just had learning to realize it. So
yeah,
and get recovered.
Yeah, the bulk of the gains are complete. I guess the neat thing about this study, it suggests there might be just that extra 0.5% that still happens even during the taper. Like you're actually continuing to grow, bigger and stronger. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's also very non-linear too. I'm sure both of you guys can speak to this, even without a taper, how you're just kind of doing one lift, it's going well, it's okay, and all of a sudden one day you're like, holy crap, that was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, where'd that come from? Oh, it was probably from all the other work I put in, but as humans, we think that it's going to be this, I'm just going to add 2 pounds or 5 pounds to my bench press each week, and it doesn't work that way.
Right, yeah. This is very easy for me to think about as a bodybuilder because all of the work as far as size has been completed long before.
Yeah.
So, but then the huge difference is, and it's why we've debated whether bodybuilding is a traditional sport, of course, is because there's no real performance as far as the day of the event. Like there's not some amount of weight you have to move or a height you have to clear or a time you have to make. I mean, even a posing routine, people argue about that. I'm like, yeah, that's sadly, it's lost a huge amount of its impact as far as the judges go. You'd like to believe that it counts. You'd like to think that Frank Zane and Lee Labrada were right, but I don't know if that's the way things have evolved. Have evolved. This next one I found interesting, and a lot of our listeners, if you're keto or you like coconut fat, this might interest you. It certainly piqued my interest.
Strength and muscle sport news.
Researchers think coconut oil may help treat COVID-19 patients. Let's see. This is from the Institute of Food Technologists. This is brand new. A group of scientists believe one potential treatment for the virus is already found in the grocery store shelves, virgin coconut oil. And let me just read a few things here. Clinical trials are currently underway at hospitals in the Philippines. There's a hospital-based component and a community-based one. Let's see here. In the hospital study, virgin coconut oil and omega-3 adjunctive therapy for hospital patients with COVID-19. In other words, they're doing this in addition to the meds. I mean, they're not going to do this instead of the meds, I'm guessing. But sort of as this, adjunctive therapy underway at the Philippine General Hospital on patients with moderate to severe COVID-19. I mean, they're right in the middle of it. And again, in addition to the drugs. Fabian Dayrit, Dayrit, he's a chem professor at Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. He says coconut oil is a unique vegetable oil in that it has a high proportion of lauric acid. And you guys have heard us nerd out about that before. No other widely consumed vegetable oil has this, explains Dayrit. When ingested, the body's lipase enzymes essentially act on these fats, these short-chain fats, or medium-chain rather, to release metabolites, which are active compounds, namely monolaurin and lauric acid. Monolaurin, if you're not familiar, that's been used in the food industry. It's an emulsifier. It's sort of a preservative, like antibacterial preservative. But this article says also has a property of being able to destroy the membrane of lipid-coated viruses. And we're familiar by now, I think a lot of us, that the SARS-CoV-2 is a lipid-coated type virus. And so anyway, the antiviral activities of lauric acid and monolaurin were first noted all the way back in 1979, later in 1982. So I've heard before that coconut oil has, preservative type qualities, and it looks like it's against bacteria and viruses. And then, of course, the reason for the virgin coconut oil, it's going to range, this says from 45 to 53% of the total fatty acids are lauric acid. So I've got coconut oil in my cupboards. I've got some straight MCT oil, too, which is usually a mix of some of these MCTs, but they just say there's just a ton of volumes of anecdotal evidence for coconuts used against viruses, I guess. So I'm not telling everybody, just go do this instead of going to the hospital. That's asinine. But it's interesting to note that some of the things that we eat, and also if you notice they snuck in that, not just coconut, but the omega-3 stuff. And Mike and I were already talking about that recently. So
I wonder how soon before we see crazy supplement ads that have completely blown this out of the water.
Oh yeah. Well, even I think they got to walk back some of what Trump says. There's all this talk, and again, it depends on who's interpreting it. But about what injecting Lysol or getting strong UV light under your skin or all this stuff. And it depends on who's interpreting what he's saying, right? But yeah, there's all kinds of kooky stuff. You can't jump the gun. So anyway, clinical trials right now on coconut oil and fish oils. So
interesting.
I suppose in one sense, if you're already doing it, it just make you feel good, right? I mean, already got your little coconut fat going, or you take your teaspoon of MCTs a couple times a day or whatever, and then there you go. It may help. Last one, and this is going to set up our topic of the day. This is, to say this is new is an understatement. This is May 2020, so this isn't out yet, but this is from the latest Journal of Strength Conditioning Research. Effect of competition frequency on strength performance of powerlifting athletes. So this is Josh Pearson and colleagues. Let's take a look here. What do they have to say? Powerlifting requires athletes to achieve the highest possible total, quote unquote, in the squat, bench, and deadlift. Athletes compete multiple times per year. However, it is not well understood how often powerlifting athletes should compete to facilitate maximal strength performance. So they looked at people over a 12-month period, 563 men and 437 women. So that's nice sample, both sexes. The guys were 28 years old and about 200 pounds. The women were 31 years old and about 150 pounds. So, these are reasonable numbers, I guess. These aren't gigantic individuals, but, they're bigger than the average reference male and female. So they took their totals is what they're looking at. They didn't. I don't have any breakdown of individual, lift, like just bench or just squat or whatever. But they just ran Pearson correlations. And the bottom line here, results demonstrate greater absolute strength at competition for all athletes at competition 2. So a 5.1% higher total at your second meet, apparently, of the year. For females, absolute strength was greater at competition 5 compared to competition 1. So, wow. But then they sort of sum up the bottom line here is the upper limit seems to be overall for powerlifters about 4 per year. But again, to me, this looks like there's a real gender difference. I guess my question to you, Phil, is does that compute with you that women could compete more often and get away with it or even improve?
Yeah, I think we see that. I mean, in my gym, the women seem to be able to compete more. They recover faster. They make small progress a little quicker, depending on how advanced they are, of course. I mean, I think some more advanced women, you're talking, 2-3 times a year as well. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's kind of what it boils down to, is what you can recover from, and also what you can make notable progress from. I mean, what's the point in doing 5 meets if you're doing the same lifts at every meet? In my opinion, it's not worth it. So, I mean, we got to have, no matter male or female, we got to have time to actually do some progress. But yeah, I mean, I think in general, I've seen women are able to compete a little more often. Mm-hmm. So,
do you think that's a gender difference, or are they using a little bit less load, or something else going on? I'm just curious.
I mean, of course, there's less load, but I mean, relative to their size, I mean, it's still pretty big, especially some of the ladies I have. So, man, I don't know. I mean, it could just be, their ability to recover joint wise. I mean, and things like that. I mean, I in general, I hear my ladies harp less about their joints hurting and things like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm no scientist. I can't tell you what's going on in that body. So, but
maybe estrogen. I always think about estrogen.
And that's what I was thinking of, but I don't want to talk out of my ass.
No, I know. I hear you. I mean, because we're all speculating,
Yeah.
This is a correlation, right? This is not cause and effect. This is just, they're just looking for trends here, But the men did trend up 5% in their second meet. And the women 12% at meet 5 compared to meet 1. So 12%, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So good call though about how advanced, because we've had episodes before where Phil was just in this valley for a month, after some peak lift, because it's just devastating.
Yeah.
So. Okay, well, again, I thought that might set up the topic, because if people are going to start a new training cycle or start picking an event, I mean, think about these women. If the ones that are competing 5 times a year, that's like every other month almost. And I agree. I mean, I'm not sure why you would do that unless you just want to, emotionally just feel more like a war-scarred veteran and just really, get in there and just get used to it. But I think the same thing. I used to think the same thing with bodybuilding is, why am I going to compete again if I'm still 190 pounds? Like, I want to compete at 196 next time, or something like that. And, you'd think you would lose motivation unless you were just in this sort of, I just want to get my feet wet and get really comfortable, with the meet environment, I guess.
Yeah. I think you can make that argument for, I call it just simulation training. Like, if someone has a really hard time keeping their shit together during a meet, then, like Phil has talked about, doing more meets is probably going to be better. But once you kind of get a handle around that and it's not that big of a deal, then probably don't need to keep doing it over and over.
Yeah. And I suppose not every meet has to be your ultimate PR main goal for the year. Like, there's concept of warm-up meet and whatnot, right? So. All right, let's go to break. When we come back, I've got some questions for the guys as far as starting a new training cycle.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. You know who this is. So I'm here to tell you about Dr. Mike T. Nelson's new book, Why You Should Eat Keto. I don't do it because, look at me. Come on, I'm fabulous and I'm fantastic. Anyway, you should text the Keto ebook, all in one word, to 44222 to receive your free copy. Do it now!
Hey listeners, this is Dr. Lonnie Lowry. If you've ever had anyone critique you on your protein intake as part of your weightlifting lifestyle, oh, you poor meathead, all that extra protein is going to rot your kidneys or weaken your bones or dehydrate you or give you gout or who knows what. There is a book available. You could simply Google CRC Press and Lowry. And what I've done is reach out to experts all over the world and create a book, a single compendium that you can hold up and say, this is why I consume extra protein. This can be very valuable when you're being quote-unquote educated by various professionals on the topic. There's an enormous amount of literature in this book on the safety, the effectiveness, how protein works in cells, the history of protein and weight trainers, much more. So again, please check out CRC Press and Protein and Lowry. You can just Google that, and I do, full disclosure, I do make a small single-digit royalty on the book, but that's not why I did it. I did it so we can all have something, our particular population, to both defend what we do and to inform our nutrition and our eating. Thanks. Iron Radio is, of course, primarily a podcast. But over the years, there have been technical glitches calling for backup streaming and listeners who wanted the convenience of other sources of audio content. Toward this end, Iron Radio is now simulcast and backed up on YouTube. If needed, please search Lawnman07 or Iron Radio from within YouTube. There's not much video, but if you like to listen through YouTube on a Roku or other living room device, there you go.
Like your weekly fix of Iron Radio? In addition to being a popular institute on iTunes, we are also on email. Simply go to www.ironradio.org and sign up for the voluntary email. You'll get a once per week email, no more, That's little more than the show notes and a link to the audio. So go for it.
All right, everybody, we're back. It's Mike and Phil and Lonnie, and we're talking about starting a new cycle. Well, training cycle, that is. Phil, let's start with you because, I mean, let me actually ask you a pre-question. Is it time? Is it allowed for you to reopen? When is your state going to actually allow you to even open your doors?
God, I don't know.
Is it May?
Because I'm getting conflicting reports on this, but some people are saying in 2 weeks. So not next week, but the week after. Okay. May 3rd or something like that. And then I just read something that, like, we won't be normal here until mid-July. So as far as groups gathering and things like that. So we'll see. I'm hoping for 2 weeks from now.
Okay. Yep.
So, but like right now, it's up in the air. We really don't know. So that's kind of, we're stuck between kind of a rock and a hard place. Figuring out I'm opening as soon as I can. So that's what I keep telling people.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm told I'm allowed.
Frustrating for everybody.
So, yeah.
Mike, you're in a different situation, but how about that pre-question for you? Like, when are you comfortable opening up? I mean, you're talking about a part of your own home, aren't you? I mean...
Yeah, so I have the garage that's converted off to a gym, but I still get a car in there. It takes a little work now with the freezer full of water and stuff. But yeah, and then for just hands-on work, I just do it in my living room and meet with clients, and if they need hands-on work or testing or whatever, yeah, it's just out of my house. So I don't know. I mean, I'm probably just waiting. Minnesota's supposed to open stuff up on the 3rd.
Okay.
But we haven't seen a huge spike in hospital admissions either, and they haven't announced anything about it. So I have a gut feeling they're trying to meet with businesses to figure out what order they're going to open things up. Another employee of ours, she works in Colorado. She said they're opening stuff up in a couple of weeks, but their peak, they believe, was actually happened back in March. So I'm guessing Minnesota's just kind of waiting to see what happens with a few other states that'll be before them and kind of go from there. I mean, the pro and the con is that, the good part is it's just sort of one-on-one, so it's not a big group interaction or anything like that. And we've been closed the entire time. I haven't had anybody over or anything. So I don't know. Just kind of waiting to see what goes on.
Yeah. I can imagine people like you could essentially start having, the occasional client. And I mean, who really knows or cares? It's practically a visitor. So it's just sort of a unique setup. One thing I will say, maybe you guys disagree with this, because I'm a little paranoid, I think, and critical of things. But I heard somebody use the analogy of a burning building. And they're like, listen, if there's flames raging out the windows, just because they're not going up, they're not getting worse, doesn't mean we march people back in the building, right? So in other words, things are leveling off. But, if your state's leveling off at 8,000 cases a day, that's not the same thing as a plateau at 8 cases per day. So, I mean, I think we need to think about that. I understand the huge pressure to reopen stuff. But at the same time, I can almost guarantee you're going to see continued, if not a nationwide like second wave, you're going to see a regional, hot spots crop up when people try to reopen, because by definition, they're going to be in each other's proximity. Again, that's my bias. I know people have all kinds of opinions on this, and there's no easy answer. But I just think just because you're plateaued, Mike, you're always talking about linear versus curvilinear responses and stuff. Just because you're like humming along, if you're humming along at a deadly risk, well, that's different than if you're humming along at a low risk. So there's all this talk about how do we safely reopen. I don't think there's any way to 100% safely reopen. Again, it depends on what you're doing. But in fact, let's get to that kind of question number one, Phil. You said, basically it's time when they let you reopen. What would be the tips you would have? So people come back in your gym. What are you gonna do with them just from a safety and cleanliness kind of perspective? What's your advice to them when they come in?
Do the things we all should have been doing before this happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wash your hands. Don't cough on people, simple things like that. I mean, wipe things down when you're done.
Yeah.
We've got Clorox wipes and bottles of freaking like denatured alcohol and stuff that you can put on things. Use them.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. I mean, I think a lot of this can be combated in an atmosphere that's not loaded with people. Like it'd be hard at like a concert or, where you're just forced to be right on top of each other, or even a commercial gym where there's 150 people in there at once or whatever, and they're all bouncing back and forth. But in a place like mine, we can easily keep it to 10 or 20 in a very large space, and you don't have to be right on top of each other. So I mean, that'd be my thing. I mean, just wash your hands, and if you're sick, don't come, which my people do a good job with anyways. Things like that. Just be empathetic and considerate of others. So,
are you going to have people like once they're done with their squatting, it's up to them to wipe down the bar? It's like you used it, you wipe it down.
That's kind of what we've done. So I mean, it's just like here you go. And a lot of my people will like wipe a bar before they use it and wipe a bar after they use it.
Yeah,
and then it's just double done. And then just in case the person that came before you forgot, but things like that.
Right. It's actually not that big a deal. I mean, it's already gym etiquette to put your weights away for God's sake and stuff like that. So take the weights, wipe everything down before you put it away. I guess I'm just thinking about things like spotting each other and all that kind of stuff. I suppose it might be good to have like a designated spotter, so you don't have like 8 different people spot you throughout the day. But But this is going to differ, of course, from a big box gym. Right. So, I mean, now it's worth saying just because these people doesn't automatically mean that they're free of all diseases.
Yes.
You can like someone, be like, oh, no, he's fine. I know him. No, that's not exactly how it works. That's not how it works. Like, this isn't a character judgment. But how about you, Mike, as far as is it time to emerge? Do you agree with your state's I mean, you're right. In Minnesota, every state's going to be regionally different. What tips for safety, or what are you going to tell people when they come back to you? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, luckily here, like for the past 7 years, anytime anyone even enters the gym or does anything, I just have a separate bathroom downstairs, and we have them use like HIPAA cleanse. It's what like surgeons use to scrub in. So we've done that since we've basically started. Mostly because my mom and my sister are nurses, and what I realized was that, man, you can try really hard to keep stuff clean, and obviously that's a definite good thing to do. But you just think about your hands and how your hands are touching everything. I'm like, if I can disinfect people's hands and have that stay active for, in theory, up to several hours after, probably going to reduce, potential spread of stuff. Again, no guarantee, but yeah, in terms of stuff opening up again, I don't know, it'll be interesting because even like we're okay to walk around here, like we haven't been completely quarantined to our house, which is nice. And even then, you see some people. I was talking on the phone to actually Don Rustin the other day, and this lady was yelling at me to like go home and work at home as I'm walking by, and I'm like, I'm just walking by talking on my phone. It wasn't really that loud. It wasn't like in a big area. There wasn't tons of people around or anything like that. So I think just like you said, the interactions will be very interesting because everyone's going to have their own sort of personal tolerance. So even if, let's say, they give you the green light, let's all just go back to normal, which is probably not going to happen. But let's say it does. That doesn't resolve the issue of someone may still think they need to keep 6 to 10 feet away from somebody else, and you don't know that, and then you happen to walk too close to someone. And so I think there's going to be a period of time with just weird interactions with other people that you're not aware of. And I think at some point they'll have to kind of gradiate the exposure because they don't want to overwhelm, hospitals and that type of thing either. Some other countries have already seen kind of a second wave and that show up because it's the catch-22. If you do a really good job of presenting it and reducing the burden on hospitals, which you definitely have to do, now how do you kind of get out of that without getting back into the problem you're trying to get around? Right? And people can't stay in their house the rest of their life either, so at some point you have to do something. So I think it's a pretty difficult situation until you get some type of testing, which hopefully we're getting more and more of. But until then, you don't know. You don't know. Someone may have symptoms. Okay, stay home. But what if they have the antibody? What if they're not really contagious? So that's what's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, they're asymptomatic, and you're like, hey, I feel great. And then they're spreading it all over the gym.
Right.
Now, you're in a unique situation, Mike, even tighter than Phil's, in that you're literally like one-on-one. I got to think when it comes to larger gyms, like I'm going to have to give this some thought as to when I go back to Pep's gym, especially because I have a pretty decent setup in my frickin' basement. But there's going to be about a third of people, I'm guessing, this isn't a real number, it's not evidence-based, my opinion, but about a third of people are going to be very tentative. Even when they swing the doors of restaurants open, they're not just going to fill up. I think that's delusional, right? People are very paranoid.
Commercial gyms were already just a petri dish of cess.
Damn.
So, and now, so I mean, you have to realize that, and it may not be the safest place to go.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, my gym's very grungy, and although that has a certain appeal, I'm not sure that appeals right now.
I saw like Marriott's doing a bunch of stuff. Airlines have put out stuff about what they're doing. Like if you're a bigger gym and you have, literally like hundreds of people going through your doors, do you have to show some type of new cleaning process before you open and what you're doing for that continually, since you've got so many people coming through and sweating and everything else and coughing and I don't know.
Yeah. And how now that you're bringing it up, a lot of the stuff we're just going to have to work through, because let's say they do temperature checks at the door, but someone just took a bunch of thermogenics. What if they're slightly warm because they're pumped up and they're wired shitless? I don't know. It's just funny.
Go home. No.
Right. Confounding variable there. Let's get to the fun stuff then. What this is mostly about, Phil. You got people that are coming back after dabbling at home. I mean, I know you did the library checkout thing and a library of strength and all that, but what are you going to assess, or screen them for, or how do you get them ready? How are you looking at their next training cycle?
We'll take a month and ease back in no matter what, because they haven't been able to train how we normally train.
Okay.
So we'll back everything off. Even right now, just because general life is a lot more stressful now than it is for everyone. I mean, and you can't ignore that. Even now, I have them backed off to what we normally do. So we're not they're at home. They're not pushing it as hard as we could. I've backed everything off 10% or so, and we're just getting work in, and knowing that will keep us just fine. I mean, we're not really looking at massive progress right now. We're looking to maintain, because with all the stress levels being high, I don't. People losing jobs, worrying about money, worrying about this virus. It's not a time for us to push it at 100%. I mean, it'd just be stupid of us. So we'll continue to back off and just, okay, let's see where you're at, and then slowly ramp them up to get used to regular training again, and then come back at it. So if you honestly look at it from the day we open to next meet, I'd like to have 16 weeks.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I think that's pretty like almost like standard X-Phys too. You go through a sort of a general conditioning phase before you start getting into a strength or power specific stuff. I mean, the disaster would be that the gym bro comes back and he's so eager that he just hurts himself.
It. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we look at this as a positive, just because my people like to push it so hard. This might do a bunch of them some good. Having a nice break. They'll come back. It's like, my joints feel better than they have in years.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Good. So,
like the sky in Los Angeles, I hear, is clear and blue now. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with your joints of your people. Watch a bunch of world records be made as soon as things get back to normal, because everybody who's young enough to be in their prime, they had this month off. All fresh and ready to do it. What about you, Mike? Assessments or anything? I know you like to monitor all kinds of stuff. What are you looking at?
I mean, the good part, I mean, I've been pretty blessed. Like, most of my online clients have stayed, which has been great. So I have the ability of changing their training as stuff opens up, or even now I've been looking at May, first, second week of May, you can start to get some equipment and stuff in, it looks like, for stuff that was on back order. So just, rewriting stuff. And like Phil said, the biggest thing I'm worried about is a couple clients that if their gym opened tomorrow, they would be there at like 7 in the morning, like the first person in. And I know they're going to go batshit crazy, which I don't want them to do. So you can look up some stuff from Tim Gabbett, who's got some writing about a load spike, right? So if you have a more advanced athlete, one of the biggest things that can contribute to injury is paradoxically going from a period of very low load to a high load. So normally I only run into this if someone takes a vacation and they just do nothing, and then they come back and they were at maybe 4 or 5 sets per exercise before they left, and they try to go right back into that. Well, technically, they didn't have really any loading for an entire week. So going from basically zero loading to a moderate or even higher loading, massive differential, right? And there's some pretty good data he presents that that's a risk for injury. So that's the thing I'm trying to avoid, right? So as soon as their gym opens, not only are they going to be probably doing different exercises, they're probably going to be doing a higher load and volume than they potentially can be protected against. So just trying to, walk them back into that. Okay, let's just start, 2 or 3 sets. Let's just, ease our way back into it. We don't need to rush and add a ton of volume right away and risk a potential injury. You haven't done it for a while, so, jumping right up to a high volume is probably not going to even be that much more beneficial from your gains or anything else.
Right, yeah. I tend to look at that differential in load as sort of a percent increase, like in volume especially. Yes. Like, so for me, it's like, I've been doing like 25 reps, but if I do 40, like, because I'm back in the gym and I'm just awake and I'm listening to metal music or something, that's a gigantic increase. I don't know what that is, like a 40 or something percent increase. That's a gigantic load increase. Yeah, so you got to be careful with that stuff. I mean, are you looking more closely at HRV in these guys then? Is that one way you might do it?
Yeah, so I look at they report their volumes of what I have programmed, and then pretty much everybody does daily HRV. 60-70% of them I have aura and sleep data. So if I think they're going to get really crazy, then I tell them, okay, send me your HRV each day, because I want to see kind of what's going on and how they're reacting to it. That also works good for taper. So I have a more advanced athlete. So I told her she wanted to do some crazy CrossFit Metcon on Saturday, today. So I said, okay, if you're really good and follow the taper and your HRV recovers back to where we think it should and you feel good, then you get to do your little crazy CrossFit Metcon on Saturday. Okay. If not, you're going to have to wait, because I don't want to add just another crap load of stress on top of you and then have you start a new cycle based off of that. So she was really good. And I don't know, she's doing some crazy CrossFit thing I wrote up for her today.
Yeah, I mean, I can see people just focusing on general conditioning, just getting back under some moderate weights, keep an eye on volume so you're not, oh my God, a 48% increase in volume. That's a bit much.
Yeah, you don't need to go that crazy. I mean, you're probably going to have some DOMs just from lack of exposure to it, and so you don't need to go crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been finding myself, I got real sore. I was just benching 2.25. I did like 1 or 2 singles with 275. I know you powerlifters are laughing, but I'm ruined, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so detrained. I don't know. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to push big numbers by any means, but these spot checks sometimes I'm like, oh God, like the huge drop in volume, because I'm just not putting in the volume. As far as like total number of reps and stuff. Like the way Phil used to talk about dose of iron, as in like weight times reps, like total volume. It's just not there. Maybe that's my fault.
I actually did more straight bar bench press now in the last 5 weeks than I've done in the previous 5 years. Just because, normally if I do that, I'll use dumbbells. But I was like, oh, okay. So just did the old school, started off the DeLorme 3x10, just get some good volume. I've also moved my grip in probably 4 inches more narrow. So I actually have a lot more tricep activation now, which feels good and weird at the same time. It's amazing how much you change your grip even a little bit. Everything just feels like you're starting over. But I'm like, I wasn't that high anyway, so I'm kind of starting over, just adding more volume. Went up to 4 sets of 10 to 12 last week. So slow progress.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, this was probably just a couple of years ago, but increases in volume, sometimes it's better for me personally, instead of like moving from 3 sets of 10 to 3 sets of 12, just do a 4th set.
Oh, totally.
More sets, not more reps. In fact, next week, I tabled it for now, but there's a study specifically mentioning training to volitional fatigue, basically training to failure versus doing the same number of reps fresh. And we'll talk about that next week. Because, the old, what you would want to believe almost is that Arnold thing from pumping iron, right? It's the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th rep that makes you grow, that makes a champion. Maybe, but does science say that? Is there something about training to absolute failure that's required, or is it just back to, again, the total dose of weight times reps? Anyway.
I always just think of quality work, too. And we can argue, we'll talk about the study next week, but if I do one more set, or have most of my clients do one more set and cut like some of their big lifts, 1 or 2 reps away from failure, or sometimes even more than that, like the amount of high quality work I can get them to do is higher, right? So especially if strength is their priority, or even a mix of strength and hypertrophy, my bias is the more higher quality work I can get them to do, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah. I played with that once when I was very young. I think I mentioned it years ago on the show, but when I was a gym peon, work front desk kind of guy, bathroom cleaner, that kind of stuff. Obviously, I was in the gym all day, and during dead periods, like at the top of every hour, I would just go do like a triple with 275 in the squat. Like at the time, that wasn't heavy for me, but I was so fresh each time I walked up to the bar, and the next day I was ruined. Now, it's partly because I think I ended up with like 18 reps completed or something, but yeah, there's something about the freshness that might play in there. The last question, Phil, is how would you choose a contest for someone? I mean, sort of in light of that research we just looked at, where multiple competitions a year might be helpful. I mean, I'm thinking about, like, when do you start the countdown? Like, what are you thinking? I know you said a month just for general conditioning back into it, but how would you help someone choose their next contest, or is there nothing special about right now?
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, it depends on where they're at in their cycle. If they're new to this, generally new to this, and I'm not talking age or anything, but just training age, and they need more meets under their belt, then we might pick one pretty quick. If they're one of my more advanced lifters, we're going to take our time and pick one out that fits a schedule, where we have the proper amount of weeks to get ready. Because it's just, yes, the percentages are percentages. That's neat to say, but they're not. They're not when somebody's squatting 315 and somebody's squatting 900. We need time to get Brian ready to squat 900.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's months, it's months to, maybe he could go do it tomorrow, but the chances of him being injured are very great compared to where if we prepare for that.
Yeah.
You're physically and mentally ready. So yeah, that's the biggest thing. It depends on, who they are and what they are. So I have a lot of people that just need the new crew. They just need more meets no matter what we can do. So we're just going to find one, and they're itching to get out there and do it. So, and most of my more advanced people are like, yeah, they want to lift. They want to lift just as bad, but they're more worried about doing well. So, and less worried about just they've already got the experience, so they know how to handle a meet. So we're gonna take our time and pick out one that fits us the best. So,
what about travel or how the meet is run? I mean, this sounds paranoid, but
that's huge. Like, there's certain meets that I just won't go to anymore.
Okay, yeah.
And certain directors, it's like, okay, we won't do that anymore. But we've been traveling a lot more now than in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot more meets away from home. But and they're also fun. It turns it more into, I don't know, it turns it more into a sporting event.
Oh, it does.
Okay, we're traveling, we're doing this, and there's a more importance laid on it. Like, I'm laying down money to travel. I'm laying down money for flights, hotel, this and that. I better get my ass ready.
A lot more skin in the game.
Yep, a lot more skin in the game that you don't waste that time and money.
Yep.
So, and that's another reason I enjoy those.
Well, and it's external validation too. It's not just the local gym. Not that those competitions aren't cool too, but it's good to go. But I guess I'm thinking even along the lines of as we emerge back into this steadily infected world at whatever level we're at. Are you going to put 6 people in a car? Well, actually, your people maybe 3. They're bigger. Or are the spotters and the loaders, are they going to have masks on? Or is that all just paranoia, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it will. I think in the powerlifting community, at least, things are going to bounce back pretty quick. And, I mean, it's not – even spotters and stuff is not that hands-on of a sport. They grab the bar.
Yeah.
They don't grab you. At a real meet, you're going to have spotters on the bar. And, there's a back spotter there kind of just in case you fall over. But it's not often that they have to grab you. The guys that are on the bar handle it. And, as long as your back spotter's not, like, coughing in your ear and stuff.
Right.
I think powerlifters are seen as big meatheads, but across the board, they're not the dumbest people in the world usually. So I think people will be smart about it, and the meet directors generally know what they're doing. So
like you said with the gym, extra precautions and stuff. Wipe down the freaking bar.
Exactly. Maybe you'll see the deadlift bar wiped down more and stuff like that in the other bar. So but I don't think it'll be that huge of a change.
Well, with all the powerlifting, the popularity of big powerlifter beards, I don't know how you wear masks at all. So tuck it in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, rely on the beard microbiome to protect you. I got a natural mask. That's a joke, everybody. That's a joke. What about you, Mike? As far as you've got competitive people, are you going to factor in anything? Or are you just going to say, listen, don't compete for the next 3 months? Or how are you going to help them choose contests and whatnot?
Yeah, it's hard, right? I mean, so I've got an athlete who's looking to do an obstacle course race to qualify, and we had everything set up, and then the date for that got changed, obviously, and now I have a bad feeling, I talked to him about it too, that the new date will probably get changed again also. So, and stuff like that, where it is a little bit time sensitive, we've just left him at a pretty good, he's pretty ready, so if something happened and they said, okay, you've got, only 4 weeks, like, he'd be good to go, right? So we just kind of left him middle of the road, kind of just cruising, working more on strength, making sure aerobics, base is still there, doing some stuff on the rower, now doing some more specific, trail runs, getting some elevation in, so soft tissue will be ready for that. So he's in a pretty good spot. We didn't want to blast him with too much fatigue with everything else going on, especially with an unknown coming up. And I think it probably would have made a huge difference either way. So the biggest thing is just trying to figure out, do you have to go sooner or later? If you have to go sooner, okay, we're going to kind of try to stay about 4-ish, maybe 5-ish weeks out, and we'll probably be pretty good at that point. It's enough. You can still do training. You can still accumulate a little fatigue, but, we're not going to go super crazy on it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's good advice for listeners, right? Like, stay in striking distance, where a 4 to 6 week peaking cycle could get you there. I mean, depending on what kind of meet. Like, not a 900-pound squat. You're not going to do that with a 4 week ramp up, but some kind of striking
especially
distance.
With something like obstacle course racing, the location may even change. So the stuff that we were preparing for by knowing the location and what it was going to look like, that may be different too. So trying not to be super kind of, I guess you can be hyper specialized for that, which is kind of an oxymoron, but being a little bit more vague on purpose.
Yeah. I think from the bodybuilding side of things, basically you might as well just pick a competition in 2021. Cause I mean, everybody can take some time unless you're I just can't think of a good reason to really, be in a room with 50 other naked people backstage.
With compromised immune systems, most likely.
No, exactly, right? Strung out, overtrained. But the point is, I mean, it takes a good year to make an appreciable difference in muscle mass anyway. I mean, unless you're, doing a heavy cycle of, anabolics or something. Maybe there's some more patience that can be had there. I don't know. Like what we were saying before with Phil, like you don't want to compete just because it's time to compete. You'd like to bring something to the table, something new to the table, I guess. But
yeah, a lot of that with I have one athlete who's competing for physique is just the thing I look at with her is just checking in on her mental state. Because some people, if they don't have anything on the horizon or don't have any context, they get a little bit too far away. So just trying to make some markers of we still ever send in pictures, do body weight and just kind of not getting too crazy. And she does a very good job with that too. So it's I think if you tell someone you're not going to compete at all until next year, I just think of the old ads of the Muscle Tech Lee Priest ads, and some people get a little too far, too far away if it's too far out.
No, it's true. Like sometimes in bodybuilding, you get these guys that it's easier to be in the off season, because you're just overeating and not like force feeding, but just generally overeating. You keep your body fat up, whatever, and then they never do. They never do compete.
Next year, bro.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for reference, all the summer conferences are all canceled for me. The the ASN event and IFT and a lot of these ones, they've gone virtual. Like I said, I was surprised. I even heard a couple of them in July were just. But again, that's a far cry, Mike. You and I, we've been to these conferences, and when there's thousands of people in one giant conference center, I can see why those aren't going to happen. And that's a far cry from a power meet where there might be just some families there or something.
Yeah. ISSN, I think now is September, I believe. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
I was just going to say that's one thing. I mean, we're probably not going to have a lot of a choice on picking a meet close because right now, like everything's canceled. And even from a meet director standpoint, when it opens up, you're not going to be like, okay, we're going to have a meet in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
nobody's going to come and be ready. So I mean, they're going to have to time it out anyways.
Yeah.
So I mean, by the time we get competitions, it's we're probably going to have to wait 12 weeks anyways. So
yeah, true.
One of my little indicators I use is for music is concert scheduling because they're oddly enough in a similar boat where if you're a musician, you have to try to figure out like, okay, when is it going to be okay for hundreds of thousands of sweaty people to be bumping in to each other, and a bunch of artists now have scheduled out 2021 is actually filling up now because a couple of them said just screw it, we're not doing anything this year, we're just going to suck it up.
We're
going to start our tour next January and hope for the best, because if we pick September and then we have to reschedule again for too early, now we're really hosed. And so now all the dates, if you need a facility, are filling up for next year now too.
Yeah, it's a good point about, I don't know. I'm very curious. Let's put it this way. What's going to happen to stuff like stadiums? Like I'm, for the foreseeable future, shit, are we going to have empty stadiums sitting there for 2 years or more? Yeah. That's going to be crazy. I mean, there may be people being like, Lowry, forget it. You're way too paranoid. Maybe. I just want to see what's going to happen because I feel like there is, in fact, a new normal. It's not let's get back to normal safely. There is no back to normal safely. At least not the old normal, anyway.
Yeah. And then I wonder about the U.S., just because the U.S. tends to be so litigious of if you're the head organizer of said sports event or said big concert and, God forbid somebody gets sick, are you potentially liable in a weird way because you signed off on the event and said, let's do it?
Yeah. I was thinking about that with the university students, too. Like, I'm actually a fan of a delayed start and, doing classes, like, every prof should at least be partly online. That way, if we have to retreat, we can, with, like, a second wave thing. But at the very least, I got to think these kids are going to have to sign one hell of a waiver, right? Because, you send your kid to university and then they're on a respirator or something like that. I think I mentioned that last week, and I don't want to sound alarmist, but these universities have thousands of people. They're like small cities, and people are milling around, and So how are we going to deal with that litigiousness? Exactly, Mike.
Yeah.
Exactly. Anyway. Okay. Well, I think that addresses the question about emerging. People are trying to emerge, and a stepwise approach makes sense to me. But obviously that's going to have an effect on what everybody's goals are, and hopefully you've got a coach like Mike or Phil who can, help you pick and choose and do something rational instead of the tens of thousands of gym bros who might just, rush back into the gym and tear their biceps, tear their triceps off.
Yeah. So look at when gyms open to see if there's a spike in injuries. Would be an interesting study.
Yeah, there'll be lots of data to mine for sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to tell the contest is over that I was throwing for
you got a winner?
training. I got 2 winners. So Ashley Sells and Nate Had. I think it's HADD, so I'm guessing it's Had. And Nate has been a listener from the start. He's listened to us while on active duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, stuff like that. So yeah, he's a long time listener. So thank you everybody who signed up. I had lots of videos sent to me. It was a tough choice, but
cool.
Yep, picked them last night. So, and I'm gonna get them going this weekend.
That may be the wave of the future, man.
Yep.
More contests like that. Yeah.
Yep. So.
All right. We'll catch everybody next time.
Yep. See you later.
See ya.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the stores. We try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening. Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the ironradio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.